Very important to get an understanding of what went wrong here and why two of the Meraglim, two of the spies, came back with great reports, and the other 10 totally went off and caused a lot of problems. As we know, that the whole destruction of Beis Hamikdash and Tisha B'Av and everything that and the 40 years that we were stuck in the Midbar all happened because of these 10 people who saw the same thing as the other 2 people, but for some reason reacted totally different. So the question is, why? So I spoke about this today for all those who are listening to 97.5 on at 12:30, and really it all boils down to attitude. In fact, life altogether, the way people behave, the way they interact, the way they're married, the way they're parents, the way they're children, the way they're teachers, really boils down to a person's attitude. Because you could have 2 people looking at the exact same thing, and one of them walking away with wow, and the other one walking away with ooh. So over here, what happened was the following, and I think it has a lot to do with a person's attitude. What happened was as follows. The Nesiim were the heads of each tribe. They're very wealthy, they're very powerful, they were big tzaddikim, and they also knew that the minute the Jews go into Israel, they're going to be kings, they're no longer going to be in any power whatsoever. So, subconsciously, even though they came up with, and this is really so, because the Torah is very alive in our lives, this is so in our lives. Subconsciously, what happened was, they said that right now we're in the Midbar, we have mun, we have a rock that gives water, we have clouds that you take your suit or your dress and you stick it into the cloud and it comes out permanent, pressed and washed. So we don't really have to do anything. We don't have to plant, we don't have to see, we don't have to grow anything, we don't have to build anything, we don't have to do anything. Hashem's taking care of everything, which gives us a lot of time to learn and to get close to Hashem. And our children, what are they seeing? The clouds that we're surrounded by, the well, the man. Our children are growing up never making an asher yatzar. Because whatever they ate in the man, you didn't have to go to the bathroom. Because the person goes to the bathroom because you take the psilas, you take food, and the stuff that you don't need is waste. But in the man, there was nothing in the man that you didn't need. It was heavenly food. So therefore, these kids for 40 years never made an asher yatzar. Never went to the bathroom. Never went to the bathroom. There was no waste from the man, and I don't think there's any waste from the water of Miriam's well. So they said, going into Eretz Yisrael is not a good thing. Because we're going to go to Israel, we're going to go to war. Then we got to wipe them all out. So then we're not going to be able to learn while we're going to war. Then we have to build houses. We're not going to be able to learn when we build houses. Then we're going to have to become farmers and shoemakers. We're not going to be able to learn then. It's much better and much more religious and much more frum if we don't go into Eretz Yisrael. So when they went to spy out the land, they already were looking, their attitude was to find what's wrong, not what's right. So they came back with huge grapes and huge figs and huge olives, and they should have come back and said, you see, you have to understand, we've been talking about this for as long as they were talking about Mashiach. Hashem came to Abraham Avinu and said, you're going to go to Eretz Zavas Chal V'Dvash, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu, Klal Yisrael, in their heads, like we're going to get out of this Golus, Mashiach's going to come, we're going to go to Israel. In their heads was, we're going to get out of this Golus, we're going to get out of Mitzrayim, we're going to get to Torah, we're going to go to Israel. So what happened all of a sudden? That they didn't want to go to Israel. Right? What happened all of a sudden? So they had this whole thing, right? So they're coming back with huge fruits. So everybody should have said, you see, it's true. Israel's different. They have grapes the size of a man. Everybody should have been jumping for joy. The prophecy is true. Instead, the way they presented it was, if a person is 5'10", my height, and a grape is 2-3 inches, so if the grape becomes 2 feet, then the people in the ratio must be 15 feet tall, 16 feet tall. So instead of saying, wow, look at the fruit, they said, well, if the fruit's that big, then imagine how big the people are. If the people are that big, we're going to lose the war. Why? Because at the end of the day, their attitude when they went into Eretz Yisrael was to find the bad. Yoshua and Kalev ben Yefuneh, their attitude going into Eretz Yisrael was the Messiah that Hashem said that Eretz Yisrael is amazing. So what happens? What happens is they come back from Eretz Yisrael, and the Meraglim, the 10 Meraglim, have this terrible report. And they said, they're giants, everybody's dying, and if you don't believe me that they're giants, because imagine I came back and told you that I just went to Mexico and there were giants. I said, Wallerstein, come on. It's one of your stories again. Right? Like, you were very tired. There are no giants in Mexico. And then I would go backstage and I would take out an orange the size of, to the roof over here. And we're like, well, the giants happen to eat these oranges. You would say, oh my God, it's true. If there's an orange that big, then imagine what the human being is. So that's what they used. They were so programmed when they went in. But the whole Frumkeit girls would have been nice if it was true. But it wasn't true. They were not wanting to go into Israel because they wanted to sit and learn and not be farmers. The real reason in the subconscious was, I'm going to lose my job. So if I'm going to lose my job, but I can't talk Lashon Hara because I'm going to lose my job, so I have to make it kosher. I have to make it frum. I have to make it that I don't feel guilty. So no, it's not about me. It's not about me losing my job. It's about I want to learn. That wasn't the truth. That would have been the truth. That would have been fine. But even that truth is totally wrong. Because at the end of the day, to have human beings that don't have to plant and don't have to build and don't have to clean and don't have to have shoemakers and doctors and all that, then Hashem didn't need to create his world. To live in a world with a rock that gives water and man for the rest of your life, and that's not why Hashem gave the world. Hashem gave the world to take the physical things in this world, no matter what they are, and turn them spiritual. So what the Meraglim wanted to do, what they were saying, was wrong. To continue living, because if you're not a farmer, you can't get payah. And there's no din of klayim. And there's no din of leket. And if you're not a weaver, there's no din of shatnez. So most of the Torah is about being a human being and about working and about being part of the world. If you're not part of the world, then you don't need to be here. So the Meraglim were messed up totally based on they didn't want to lose their jobs. That was the bottom. And I think that people need to cut through the baloney and know really why they make decisions. Cut through all the bluff and know really why you're making a decision. Are you saying a bad report when they ask you about this girl for a shidduch? Are you really saying it because you want to protect the other person? Or are you saying it because you wanted that shidduch read to you? Or you don't like that girl? Or you're jealous of that girl? You need, that's just one example. You need to go inside yourself. There's so many of us that don't know ourselves. And that is the worst thing, to live your whole life a lie. And to find out at the end of your life that everything you were translating was just to protect your guilty conscience. And that's what happened to the brothers. When Yosef said, I need Yosef or Eid Avichai, they lost their neshama. Why did they lose their neshama? Because they realized that they had a judgment that Yosef deserved to die because he was a rat. He told on them to their father and he judged them. They realized that if that was true, then Yosef would be dead. And they realized that their whole judgment and their whole thing came from something else. From kinna. It came from a jealousy that Yosef was getting more attention, or his jacket that he got, or whatever it was. And when they realized that to this point, They were just making excuses in their mind that they were doing the right thing, but now Yosef's alive. They were doing the right thing, he would have died. They could not handle that. Says the Medrash, Oy to the person who comes to the next world and finds that you lived your whole life with a lie, that you were just making excuses, and whatever you were doing was just to cover up what was really going on inside. A person has to know themselves, and the first thing a person has to know is that you need to have a positive attitude. Because if you have a negative attitude, then you will always see the bad in your husband, your kids, the world, the sky, people, everything. You can walk out on a rainy day, and you could say, ugh. And you can walk out on a rainy day, and you can say, you know, this is great, because that means that this summer I'm going to be able to water my flowers and water my grass, because if it doesn't rain now in these months, then the city says you can't use water, only on, you don't know this, well, because you don't own houses, on alternate days. Today it's raining, it's pouring for 3 days. I'm like, every day the sprinkler can be on, and I can fill up my pool, and we're not going to have a drought. That's one person. Other person is like, oh, it's raining. Now how is that person who walks out, oh, it's raining, how are you going to have a good day? What's going to turn that around? Nothing. If you start your day in a nasty attitude, there's nothing that's going to turn that around. And therefore, in Shulchan Aruch it says that when a person wakes up in the morning, before it says, if you open up the Shulchan Aruch, get the Shulchan Aruch, before it says anything about brachas, tzitzis, netilas yadayim, asher yatzar, anything, the first thing it says, open up a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, is get up, ka'ari, like a lion. Wake up like a lion. Be brave like a bear. Run like a deer and fly like an eagle. Now, anyone who gets out of their bed in the morning, right, and they're like, I feel like a lion. Ma, hear me roar. I feel light, like a deer. I can see the whole world from a different perspective, like an eagle. And don't you mess with the Jewish nation, because we're as brave as a bear. That's an attitude. That's positive. The rest of your day, nobody is getting you down. So the Shulchan Aruch says, before Shiyotza, before the Netilas Yadayim, before anything, when you open your eyes, that's when your attitude has to start. And you got to feel like a lion. You're the king of the jungle. At the same time, you're fast and you can fly. And you're also very brave. And a bear is a protector. You don't mess with a mama bear ever. Ever, especially when it's with its cubs. There's no amount of bullets that will take it down. So the Torah tells us, the Shulchan Aruch tells us, it's all about attitude. And the first thing you need to do when you wake up in the morning is to say Moda'ani. Moda'ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim. Thank you, Hashem, shechazati b'nishmasi. That's a positive statement. That's a positive attitude. Thank you, Hashem, that you gave me back my soul, that I'm alive again. If you say that in the morning, that's your attitude in the morning, you're a different person. If you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh no, another day. You're not going to be able to change it that day. If that's how you start your day, oh no, another day, then it's going to be another day. And that's what happened in this week's parasha. Meraglim had an attitude, and it's a question that I asked today on the radio, and I don't have the answer yet. It says very clearly in Rashi that Moshe Rabbeinu had to give a bracha to Yehoshua, a special bracha. Vayikra Moshe Yehoshua nispalel olav. He davened on him. Hashem Yoshiacha, God should protect you. Me'atzas hamaraglim, from the eitzah of the maraglim, the bad, the report that the maraglim are going to give, which means that Moshe Rabbeinu knew before he sent them out that this was going to be a disaster, that this mission was going to be a disaster. Why would I bench if I'm sending my class to Bear Mountains, and I'm like, I walk over to this one kid, and I'm like, God should protect you from the rest of these Meshuganas who are going to probably jump off the mountain, then that means that I already realized that this is not going to be a good trip. So Moshe Rabbeinu is telling him, you need a special bracha that you shouldn't be part of the Eitzah of the Meraglim, that meant that he knew this was going to be a failure. So why did he send them? And the other one, Kalev ben Yefuneh, who immediately, when he got into Israel, the first place he went, says Rashi, was to Hebron, was to the Kivrei Avos, to Ma'aras HaMachpelah. First place he went to was Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Why did he go to Ma'aras HaMachpelah? By the way, his reward was that he got Hebron. His tribe got Hebron. But why did he go to Ma'aras HaMachpelah? So it says in Rashi, he went to David that he shouldn't be part of this bad group. Now this was before they went into Israel. So he knew that this was a bad group. So why'd you go? Why'd Yehoshua and Kalev go? If they knew that it wasn't going to be good. So I saw an answer. Haven't been able to find it, but I remember from years ago, I saw an answer that Yehoshua with Moshe's bracha and Kalev with the Mesorah, the first place he went to was, one went to his Rabbi to get a bracha, the other one went to his parents and grandparents, to the Mesorah of Klal Yisrael, because that's one of our biggest protectors, is where we come from. So Kalev said, before we go anywhere, I'm going to Ma'aras HaMachpelah. They didn't go. He went, and he davened, and it says, it's very Kabbalistic, it says that when he left the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, a ruach, whatever that means, a ruach, a spirit, went with him. That's what it says. And there's many midrashim on what this ruach was. What I want to say, that the ruach, right, ruach means spirit, is he had a ruach acheres. He had a different spirit, he had a different attitude than the rest of the Meraglim. He went looking for the good. I was just talking to a girl today. So she's been burnt. She's been dating for a long time. And she's like, she's burnt out. She's going out with a lot of clowns. Really. Like a lot of guys. It was just, you know, first date, first minute's like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of this? So she's like, so I had a talk with her today. And I have a very good shidduch for her. But her attitude is like, Wallerstein is going to be fight. He's going to walk in the door. I'm going to know he's not good already. And I'm like, in my head, how am I going to get this girl ever married? If her attitude is like that, right, that he's going to walk in the room, then guess what? No matter what he looks like, no matter what he sounds like, there's going to be, he's really, really perfect, Rabbi, but. Because the attitude is, I don't believe in this anymore. I don't believe I'm going to find the right guy anymore. So you know what? You're not going to find the right guy anymore. If that's your attitude, you will exude that negative energy, and nobody wants to marry a negative energy. And whether it's in the workplace or as a teacher walking into a class, if that's what you're giving off, if you had I remember my father died, so I was very, I'm not going to say depressed, but I was very upset. And after the shiva, I got up and I went right into school. And I walked into my class, and I realized that if I'm going to come in carrying this burden the first year, my father passed away on my shoulders, these kids, right, no matter how I'm going to teach them, they're going to get depressed. If I'm going to be depressed, they're going to get depressed. If I'm going to be happy and continue doing it, I want to cry in my closet, cry in my room. But in front of these kids, I have to exude unbelievable happiness, unbelievable up attitude. There's a story with the Ger Rebbe. The old Ger Rebbe lost all his children and his wife, I think 12 children. Or was the Kleisenberger Rebbe? One of the two. No, it was the Ger Rebbe. Lost all his children in the Holocaust. And he wasn't well, and he was in the hospital. And Rav Aryeh Levine, it's in Rav Aryeh Levine's book, Rav Aryeh Levine, who was the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, sat by the Ger Rebbe and said to him, I have to ask you something. You lost 12 children who were killed by the Nazis, and your wife. How do you do it? How do you lead the whole Ger Hasidus after such a loss? And he said, Ger Rebbe, it's in Rav Aryeh Levine's book. He said, you think I don't cry? You think I don't cry? You think I'm not human? He says, I cry. I miss my Yankel and my Esti and all the children that he lost. He says, I cry, but I never cry in front of the Hasidim. I cry privately in my room. In front of the Hasidim, I'm the Rebbe. And we dance, and we sing, and I have Tish. I cannot exude negative energy in front of my Hasidim. Alone, there are times that I have to cry. Person's attitude, what a person gives off to other people, that is what happens to those other people? If a person who lives in a house where their mother and father are always upset and always angry and there's negative energy, they grow up being negative energy. Where the parents are always in a good mood, of course they get angry about things that you do wrong. That's not an attitude. That's not a mood. But people are brought up in a house that's happy, a house that's... They smile. They don't even know why they're smiling. Because it becomes part of the atmosphere. That happened in this week's parsha. Because it says when they came back, so there was this big fight. Kalev got up and Kalev said, we have nothing to worry about. Hashem can do it. He took us out of Mitzrayim. Hashem can do anything. The Rambam said, oh my gosh, they're giants. Everybody's dying. We'll never beat them. They're huge. Their cities are huge. But the Jews did not cry. They did not panic until one pasuk. And that, if you want to look it up, because I'm sure you want to do that tonight. Pasuk Lamed Gimel and Perek Yud Gimel. So they got up and they said the following: V'sham ni'inu et hanafilim b'nei anak. We saw the giants. V'anihi be'einenu, and we were in our eyes kichagavim, like grasshoppers. V'chein hayinu be'eineihem, and therefore we were grasshoppers in their eyes. This pasuk I have been teaching for 34 years. This is one of my favorite psukim in the whole Torah. What does this pasuk say? The Meraglim said, in our eyes, we feel like grasshoppers. And therefore, ulechein, and therefore, in the giant's eyes, we were grasshoppers. No. It should be the other way around. The giants looked at us as grasshoppers, and therefore, we felt like grasshoppers. Imagine, I'm a Rabbi. You're a student in my class. And I say something nasty to you. You know what? You don't have the brains of a mosquito. Nasty. That's pretty nasty, right? So, you're going to feel like a mosquito. Because I said that to you. I'm calling you a mosquito. So you might feel like a mosquito. If I call you enough, it's abuse. And I tell you, you can't do it, you're nothing, you're nobody, you're nothing, you're nobody, you're nothing, you're nobody. All of a sudden you start walking around, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I can't do anything. That's abuse. That's emotional abuse. But that's not what it says here. Here it says that the student is walking around and saying, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I'm a mosquito, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. And therefore, all of us, including the teacher, are looking at her and thinking she's a nothing, she's a nobody. That doesn't make sense. It's the other way around. If I tell you and I'm the teacher that you're a nobody, so you believe you're a nobody. But if you believe you're a nobody, what does that have to do with me? The pasuk here is saying, we looked at ourselves like grasshoppers. Therefore, they looked at us like grasshoppers. In other words, what I think of myself is what I project to others. And then Rashi says something. Rashi says that the Meraglim heard the giants talking, and one said to the other, there are ants in the grass, that was them, and they sound like humans. Now 1 second, Rashi. How are you explaining the pasuk? The pasuk, they're saying they're grasshoppers. How could you say that they heard the giants call them ants? How is Rashi explaining the pasuk? Rashi is saying, do you know how they knew what they were? Because they heard the giants talking about it. The Torah says, do you know how they know what they were? Because that's what they thought of themselves. What a pasuk. What a lesson in psychology. The giants didn't say you're a bunch of grasshoppers. They felt that they were grasshoppers. And therefore they said, if we feel we're grasshoppers, surely the giants think we're grasshoppers. Your attitude, what you think of yourself, is what in the end other people are going to think of you. What you project is what other people are going to feel. Not what other people, as what I told you about the bulletproof vest. People can walk over to you and say, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're miserable. And you're like, there's something wrong with that person. That person, there's something wrong. They need a lot of help. They need a vacation. They're really wired. They're like totally out of their minds. And it bounces right off. But if you think you're ugly and you're stupid and you're miserable, then even, and I see this all the time, even you're not. And your parents tell you you're beautiful. And your teachers tell you you're beautiful. And your husband tells you you're beautiful. You're like, no, I'm ugly. What do you mean you're ugly? You're beautiful. You won every beauty contest in the world. No, I'm ugly. You know how many actresses committed suicide? Famous, beautiful actresses committed suicide. Famous musicians committed suicide. What are you down about? You walk into a room and everybody's cheering and screaming, and you're at the Oscars and there's 20, 30, 40,000 people cheering, and then there's millions of people watching you, and you walk up there and you have the whole world, and then 2 weeks later she's dead on an overdose. What are you doing when you cry? The whole world was just cheering for you 2 weeks ago. I remember Judy Garland when I was a little boy. So The Wizard of Oz was like the one movie that came out. The Wizard of Oz in black and white. And I, as a kid, was, fascinated. The Wizard of Oz with munchkins. And the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, this was perfect, So there was the girl who played Dorothy, and it was Judy Garland. So everybody, this was the actress that was at that time the biggest of the big. And then one day, I heard in school, she killed herself. I was a little kid at the time. She killed herself. Dorothy can't die. She followed the yellow brick road. She killed the Wicked Witch of the West. She's not the one that was melting. The Wicked Witch of the West was melting. So if anybody overdosed, it should have been her. She was green. She had a big nose. Come on. I could not understand as a child that Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz killed herself. And the answer is, her belief was that she was a grasshopper. And no matter how many people were cheering and Oscars and a house in Beverly Hills and famous and a million paparazzis, flash cubes wherever she went, but her look at who she was a grasshopper. And if that's who she thought she was, that's who she was. You are what you think you are. And it's a pasuk in our holy Torah. You are what you think you are. If you think you are a grasshopper, you are a grasshopper. If you think you are a giant, you are a giant. I'll prove it to you. In Australia, so they had this competition or gambling or bet. They have these crazy things in their bars. They throw dwarves. They do all kinds of crazy things. So they made the thing. The next 20 guys that walk into the bar, the tallest guy wins. Everybody puts in a certain amount of money. The tallest guy wins. So 6 foot, 6'2", 6'4", these guys are walking in, and this little midget walks in. And he goes, "I'm the winner!" And they're like, what's wrong with him, right? He says, "You want me to prove that I'm the tallest one here?" And he hops on to one of the biggest guy's shoulders. And he's above everybody. He says, "You see, you don't have to be born tall. You just have to know which shoulders to jump on." It was one of the greatest lines I've ever heard in my life. You don't have to be born tall, girls. You just have to know whose shoulders to jump on. And God tells us, "Hashechel Hashem Yehavcha, v'hu yikalkalecha," jump on my shoulders. You're not a grasshopper if you jump on God's shoulders. You're not ugly or stupid or miserable if you jump on God's shoulders. That was a line that I heard. I remember when I heard it, I was like, whoa. Any one of us, no matter how small we are in our souls, no matter how far we are, how far gone we are, Hashem says, "I got big shoulders. The whole world is my shoulders. Hashachal Hashem Yahavcha. Give it to me. Uhu yikalkalecha, and He'll take care of it. Jump on my shoulders. You're above everybody." But the Meraglim didn't have that perception. Only Yehoshua and Kalev had that perception. And David HaMelech later on, when it came to Goliath, well, I don't want to go to fight. He said, what are you talking about? You think he's a giant? I'm on Hashem's shoulders, said David HaMelech. I'm 100 million miles taller than Goliath. And he killed him. It's attitude. It's how you wake up in the morning. It's what you think of yourself. And this is in Pasha Shelach. And what happens when 10 leaders get up and say, we're grasshoppers? What happens when your leader tells you that he sees himself as a grasshopper? The next pasuk, everything goes to pot, to pieces. Right after they say, we were grasshoppers in their eyes, and they lifted up, the whole nation lifted up, they began to panic, and they started to scream, and they cried that whole night. They went into a total panic. Why didn't they go into a total panic when the Meraglim first said this? When the Meraglim first came back from Israel and said, there are giants and there's all these problems, there was no panic. But when the leaders of Klal Yisrael got up, the people who were supposed to lead Klal Yisrael, and said, we're grasshoppers, then Klal Yisrael said, if you're the Nasi and you're a grasshopper, then I'm a nothing. Oh my God, who's going to save us? And they went totally to pieces, and they cried for nothing, because all they needed to understand is, you don't have to be born that way, you just need to know how to jump on the right shoulders. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you cried tonight for nothing, forever till Mashiach comes, which is Tisha B'Av night, you will cry for something. And the Holocaust, and the Inquisition, and the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash all happened on Tisha B'Av night. Because the Jews cried for nothing, because they had the wrong attitude. And that is the most important thing the Torah tells us. When you get up in the morning, you must be positive. You got to feel like a lion. Now, you don't always feel like a lion. You have to work on it. You have to work on it. I'll end with a fascinating story about waking up in the morning. So, my father used to tell this to me all the time. In Yiddish, there's a saying, your bed is your coffin. I don't know how to say it in Yiddish. My father used to always say, your bed is your coffin. So, you don't want to hang out there too much. Right? So, he says a story about Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky, who lived in Yerushalayim, not Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. And he used to sleep 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night. And he would get up at 2 o'clock. He would go to sleep at 12, get up at 2. One night, he woke up at 1 o'clock after an hour. And I guess his student that was there, he jumped out of bed. And the student said, Rebbe, it's not 2 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock. Go back to bed. You have another hour to go to sleep. So he said the following, unbelievable. It says in the Torah, during the Dor HaMidbar, which is this one, the Jews came out of Egypt. Now, what happened was like this. Our punishment was that for 40 years we're going to travel in the desert. Every night, every single night of those 40 years, every Jewish man would dig a grave. And he would sleep in the grave. And a certain amount of people would not wake up. Because Hashem said that this whole nation that's complaining now will not go into Israel. So all the Jews that got out of Mitzrayim, that were above the age of 20, at this point, that cried about what the Meraglim said, they had to die out in the Midbar. That whole generation had to die out in the Midbar. Why? Why did that whole generation have to die out in the Midbar? So one of the reasons brought down was that attitude that they had of non-belief, of not understanding that all you need to do is jump on a curtain, that had to be ripped out. They could not be in their children. So the children that went into Eretz Yisrael could not have that attitude. Or there was no way that they could live in Eretz Yisrael with that attitude. So that had to be gone. But every single night, it says, every single night, they would lay in these graves, and then in the morning, when the sun would start to come up, when you woke up, it was like, I have another day. Could you imagine that? And some people didn't wake up, and they covered them up, and that was it. Every single day, that's how they slept for 40 years. And that's why Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av, is a big yontif, besides that the girls gave each other their clothing so nobody knew who was rich and poor, which was a big thing by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the other thing was that on the 15th day of Av, they realized that this whole thing of dying in the grave was over, and whoever is alive is going into Eretz Yisrael. So this Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky said that when I learned Pasha Shelach, this week's Pasha, and I learned what these people did, he said, could you imagine what they felt like when they opened their eyes in the morning? I'm not dead! It's not my turn! I have another day! This is amazing! Oh, look at the guy next to me. Sorry, you didn't have such a good night, but I'm alive! You can imagine he ran to his house, he hugged his kids, he hugged his wife. I'm back! Because they would go outside the encampment and lay down in these graves. I'm back! And imagine all those men, the minute the sun came up, all those men running back to their homes and kissing their kids, and I'm alive! Another day! So Kamenetsky said, I was supposed to sleep 2 hours till 2 o'clock. But I woke up at 1 o'clock. I'm up! I went to sleep, I gave my soul to God, and He gave it back. I'm up! You think I'm going to go take another chance? And go back to sleep? I'm here! That's how you have to look at your morning, girls, when you wake up. That's how you have to look at your morning. I was dead! People die in their sleep for no reason. I was dead! I was one of those people in the midbar, and I'm up! Ma! Where are you? I want to give you a kiss! I want to have a coffee. I want to taste the coffee, something hot. I want to make a bracha. I am so excited. I have another day. I don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow morning. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow morning. We're going to sleep tonight. There's no guarantees we're going to wake up tomorrow. Hashem should give us life. There's no guarantees. But we woke up this morning. So Rav Kamenetsky said to him, I should go back to sleep? Are you kidding me? I'm up. Let's go. Let's go learn. I'm a lion. I'm a bear. I'm an eagle. I got another day. Now you're waking up in the morning with the right attitude. That you opened your eyes and you got your soul back. Because some people in this world tonight are not going to wake up tomorrow morning. Somewhere. For many different reasons. You are, Mitzvah Hashem. So your attitude in the morning has to be, what? Wow. And the way he says it, the way my father used to say it, I don't remember the Yiddish saying for it. He said, you get out of bed, it's like getting out of your kever. It's like coming out of your grave. Can you imagine? You can't imagine such a thing. At night, being put into a grave, not knowing if when you go to sleep you're going to wake up the next morning or that you're going to put sand on you, and the next morning you wake up and there's sunlight or rain or who cares? Let it rain on my face. Rain away! I'm alive! It's a whole different way of thinking. It's a whole different attitude. And if you have that attitude, when you start in the morning, you're going to have an amazing day. That's for sure. And that we learn from here. And if you think you're a grasshopper, you are a grasshopper. And everyone's going to know that you're a grasshopper, and they're going to look at you like a grasshopper. But you're not a grasshopper. You might even be a midget, but you can jump on Hashem's shoulders. You might be a midget in your spiritual. You might be a midget emotionally. You might be physically a midget. I don't know. Everyone has their own picture of who they are. So what? So what? So put me on Hashem's shoulders. I'm a giant. We're all a giant. And that's what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says that every person was created in the image of God. Chiba Yisera, Hashem said, you're my children. And Chiba Yisera above that is I gave you the Torah. Being Hashem's child is even being greater than Hashem's spouse. Chasen Kala, Shlomo HaMelech. What's the difference between a husband, wife, and a husband, child, or a wife and a child? A husband and wife are two entities, right, that you put together, but they're not really one. They're two entities. A child is a part of their parent. Their genetics, their DNA is part of their parent. Hashem said to us, the rest of the world are created in my image. But Jews are my children, which means you're actually part of me. Your DNA is my DNA. So Hashem tells us, Banim atem la Hashem. You are my children. You are part of me. You should be jumping for joy. You should be jumping up and down. And then the end of the Mishnah says, Chavivi Yisera. And on top of that, okay, so I'm part of you, and I'm your child. How do I know you like me? How do you know you like me? I'm your child, but I don't know if you like me. Maybe you don't like me. And then you have that famous saying that I love my children, but I don't like them. I don't like that. I love my mother, but I don't like her. I have to try to understand the psychology of that, but I've heard it very often. Do you love your mother? Yes, I love my mother, but I don't like her. Because I love her because she's my mother, but I don't really like her. In other words, if she wasn't my mother, I wouldn't hang out with her, that's for sure. I don't really like her, right? So we're B'nai Matam, we're all children of Hashem, so we love him because we're his children, but how do we know he likes us? So the end of the Mishnah says, Chi b'Yisera, how does a child know if a parent loves them? If you give them a prize. So Hashem went into his treasury, and he said, what could I give my children? And he has this present that was 2,022 generations before the world was created. It was created. And it's called the Torah. And he goes into his treasure chest and he goes to take out, because just being his kid doesn't mean he likes you. And he says, I'm going to give them the most precious thing that I have in my world. And the angels are like, no way. Moshe Rabbeinu, Ben Amram, they called him. He came up to get this. We're going to kill him. And he had to hold on to Hashem's Kisei HaKavod. They wanted to kill him. Why? You can't give them that present. That's your most precious thing. And Hashem said, no. That's for my kindlech. And he said, and there's a surprise. In the present, there's another present. Could you imagine when you give a kid a present and he opens the box and it's like his dream, and then there's another little wrapped up box in the middle. And he's like, another present? Another present. And we opened up that present, and when was it? Shabbos. It says Shabbos, the Torah was a big present, and Hashem's special present above everything, he gave her Shabbos. To tell us that not only you're part of me, but I love you, and I want to give you the best that I have. And the best that I have in the next world is not a DVD, and it's not an internet, and it's not a big fat screen. It is the Torah. And the best of the Torah is Shabbos. And I want you, my children, to have that. And if we understand that, then our whole attitude towards Yiddishkeit is going to be a lot different. You're going to walk out here, outside, you're going to be screaming, you know who I am? Do you know, Nancy, who I am? Not Rabbi Wallerstein. I am part of God. I am his child. And you know what? He loves me so much that he gave me his most precious thing in the world. Ha! On the whole world. Besides us. We got it all. And we should be jumping up and down. Instead, everyone's walking around. Shabbos, this mitzvah, tznius, my skirt. They're bothering me about this. He's talking about that. And Goyish music and all that. He gave us his most precious thing. And we're throwing that away for what? What the dog's playing with? What the pet outside is playing with? That's what we're throwing it away for? A husband gives his wife a diamond ring and she tosses it in the garbage. And she goes outside and she says, I want a basketball or a football. I want to play in the street with all the kids. Shameful, I just spent $200,000 on a perfect 18-carat beautiful diamond, and she takes that and throws it down the sewer. I don't want that. I want to play bally with all the 6-year-olds in the street. Let's go play bally. He's like, oh my gosh, I need to take her to a psych ward. Wants to play bally. She's 45 years old. Why do you want to play bally? The 6 years old. That's what we're doing. That's our attitude. Our attitude is that Yiddishkeit. B'nai Matam Hashem. You wake up every morning and you get out of your grave. It's a nice grave. It's got a few pillows and a nice blanket and 2 mattresses and a box spring. It's a nice grave. It's a grave. There's nothing happening there. So we have to wake up Ka'ari. We have to wake up like a lion. We got to change our attitude. Everyone in America, everyone in this whole world, they're so miserable. I did a little thing after I prepared this year. I like to do this. So today when I was going around and I was going into stores, I was like watching people. We're pretty miserable. You don't see anybody smiling to themselves, right? Everyone's like pretty miserable. Actually, last week I was on Avenue J, and this non-Jewish guy walks by this also non-Jewish guy that's standing outside a store. He says, yo, have an amazing day, man. And the guy, I was standing there, and the guy that's standing on the wall that got this beautiful compliment, shut up, man. I'm like, the guy said, have an amazing day. What is that? That's the attitude. It's like, don't tell me to have an amazing day. I'm having a miserable day. And that's what I want to have. Don't give me no bracha. We have to change that. Each person, and if each person, you're laughing, spend a little time watching what's going on around you instead of looking at your cell phone. Spend a little time in the human race. See what's going on in the human race. They are not happy. It is dangerous to get into an elevator. I mean, they are miserable. Whether you're in a hospital or I went today in a business thing, I got into the elevator and it was like nobody made eye contact. It was like no eye contact whatsoever. You walk out of that elevator and you ask a person, how many people were in the elevator? I don't know. How many men, how many women? I don't know. You're not allowed to be part of the human race. And they were all on their phone. They were all, Baruch Hashem, the phones work in the elevator, going up and down. Everybody was looking at this. I was in the hospital 2 weeks ago. Nurses and doctors, they're in the, I guess because the rule is you're not allowed to talk. So they're in there, and the doctors and nurses, they don't look at each other. And they're all texting, and they're all on their phones, and we live in a world that has a miserable attitude. And each person needs to change that. And if you change that, you're going to be happy, you're going to have a happy marriage, and you're going to be happy with your kids, you're going to be happy in school, you're going to be a happy person. I got out of my grave this morning. If you think about it, I got out of my grave this morning, you're going to be so happy. And if you're going to be happy, your kids are going to be happy. And happiness spreads. I sound like I'm a hippie from the 60s. So my bracha to everyone is that you should never ever think you're a grasshopper. And always understand that you can always be on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's shoulders. And if you're on God's shoulders, He says, give me your problems. Put them down in the wagon. The guy was carrying like 1,000 pounds on his back. And this guy drives by in a wagon. He says, get on, don't schlep that stuff. Get on my wagon. And he gets on the wagon, and he's sitting next to the wagon driver with all the stuff on his back, all bent over like this. And the wagon driver says to him, take the stuff off your back and put it on the floor. And he says, no, I don't want to bother you. It's nice enough that you're taking me. Hello? For all you that didn't get it, think about it. Manishtana said, if I'm taking you already, so take it off your back and put it on the floor. I'm taking it anyway. Hashem says the same thing. Hashach Hashem Yahavcha. I got you. I'm giving you life already. Take your stuff and throw it to me. I'll handle it. But you got to throw it to me. Hashem should give us tzlacha and bracha and simcha and the right attitude.
Something to think about, go home.
For sure.
Somebody wanted to sit at the table with me, but she called and